Good afternoon, YouTube. It's Kim from Rainbow Lakers Farm coming to you from the enormous vegetable garden, which, as you can see, basically just starts there. This is just a drainage cesspool at the moment. So I don't have a lot to report except that things are, getting big. The Hugel's stump bed has sprouted squash and zinnias. Peppers are growing. Everything is basically put on a bunch of growth because we've had just a ton of rain, and it hasn't been terribly cold. So it hasn't been warm rain, but it's also not super cold rain. So happy about that. So I brought out some peppers that I'd had inside that I've kind of hardened off by giving them time to acclimate. And this bed I had a bunch of bok choy in, my baby toy choy. So I've harvested all of that, and since that's come out, I'm slowly bringing in some more compost here. So I'm gonna just top this off before I put the peppers in there because obviously plants that are growing in there have taken up nutrients and therefore depleted it from the soil. So I'm going to bring in some compost for that before I transplant these little guys out into there. I got the last bit of tomatoes went in, and they're along that trellis down there. So there's, I think, 20 some there, and I put another 5 or 6 over there, and I have another. I made this bed and I had different plans for it, but I put the tomatoes in there instead. So I did get 100 tomatoes in the ground out here in this particular garden. George is just surveying things. So everything's looking really good. I have just weeded this onion bed where Wilson knocked some of these down. It'll be interesting to see what size onions we get from the ones that he's knocked down, because basically for onions, the more green you have here, the bigger the bulb down here. So these are Walla Walla sweet onions, and this does get really big as the season progresses. So I've just come out here and I've weeded this bed, and I'm just starting to perform this little task here, which is basically me just running my finger around here. Some people call this ringing. You're ringing your onion, and all you're really doing is pulling the soil back a little bit to allow this part of the onion to expand, so it's not being encumbered by the pressure from the dirt. And you don't have to worry about the roots because they're on the very bottom portion of this round bulb going straight down into the ground, so it's not going to hurt it to have this pulled away. So it's just a little tedious thing where you'd literally just come out here and go like this, and you can see the size of that to my hand in this glove. This is certainly bigger than a golf ball, but so basically all you got to do is come down and just ring these, each one, so that has more room to produce the bulb and allow the bulb to get bigger. So this one's not quite as big as the other ones, and this dirt, like, I can feel as I'm scooching it away that it's packed in there pretty tight. So I'll have to go down the row and do that for all of them. And then this one, I noticed, I think it actually has some slug damage. So this one didn't get very big, and I actually pulled this out earlier. This is really soft in here and mushy, so I'm going to toss that one out. You can see it's not like super healthy. So when you live on a farm, you can just toss it to the side and your dog will get it. He'll carry it around and take it somewhere you don't want it to be. But, so I have this little tedious chore just going around and ringing all these onions, and then while I'm down here, I just pull the weeds. So weeding is aesthetic, and it's also, weeds are another type of plant. It's just growing where you don't want it to grow, and they do take away nutrients from what you're trying to grow. So one reason why weeding is important other than aesthetic. And you can see this one, this onion was set really low, or the dirt could have been moved when Wilson zoomed his way through here. So this one is not huge, and it's going to be more spherical shaped. So, and you can see that compared to its neighbor, this one does not have a lot of top growth. So I don't anticipate that this is going to make a huge onion. Now I could be wrong, but it feels like right here, like when I move that feels broken. So that could be why. So one thing you could do with this is harvest it and use it like a scallion or a salad onion. So this green part totally edible, and you can chop that up in the bottom. So for the most part, I think these Walla Wallas look good. This one right here is probably the biggest one. I mean, that's huge. That's like a softball or a baseball. And Wilson may or may not have knocked this one over, or it could have just gotten too heavy and flopped over on its own. So I'm gonna cut over here. Normally I don't walk in my garden bed, but I wanted to show you guys some cool thing that I found. So I was checking on my potatoes, and when I check on potatoes, I just kind of dig around at the base to see what's happening. So I have these really beautiful bright red, so pretty, and you can tell just when I was moving the dirt, you can see here that the skin, so when you dig up a fresh potato, it's not like one you get from the store. The skin, basically, you can rub it off with your hands, and it's kind of, that's different than what you would find in the store. You'd have to use a peeler. This potato is actually huge. Like as I'm performing a little excavation here, I can tell you that this thing is just huge. And look, there's another one right here. That one's huge too. So if you wanted to harvest these small and not let them get huge, like if you're looking for baby potatoes for a recipe or put in a niçoise salad or something where you want them to be smaller and for aesthetic reasons, there's no reason why you can't pull these off of here right now and it won't hurt this plant. You can come back and steal other potatoes from it later. But it is important that if you're not going to take the potato, you have to cover it back up with dirt, because they really can't have light on them. When you see ones that have, you get a potato from the store and it's green, that is because the actual potato itself got sunlight on it, and it is, it's poisonous. You'd have to eat a ton of them before you got sick, but in general you don't want to eat a potato that's got green on it. So these are my red onions that I grew from sets, and I haven't gotten all the way down here to pull the weeds, as you can see. These have a lot of growth. Mainly the dog didn't knock it down, so they have a lot of growth, but I noticed because these were sets, I planted them kind of deep. So I need to come in here and do some really vigorous ringing of these, because this is not making a proper bulbous bulb. These are more of a kind of elongated and not round. So I really need to come in here and ring all of these, especially ones like this where they, have kind of grown over onto their side. And obviously I need to pull these weeds. These onions are growing in compost. So this is horse poop, in case anyone was wondering. And the onions are heavy feeders. They do like a lot of fertile soil. And you can see that they have just put on, like, this is just really thick. And here you have, this is called a scape. So this is the flower that will produce seeds for this plant. And in general, I pinch off the flowers as opposed to letting them set seed, because I've let them set seed. They do make a really pretty flower, but I'm just gonna, that's literally all I'm gonna do, and just toss that down so that doesn't make a flower. When I have let them set seed, this you know, this is going to form like a ball, and then it will open up and it will have a ton of little tiny flowers. And yes, they're really pretty, but they will end up everywhere for miles. You will be growing onions for the rest of your life. They will pop up everywhere and colonize your yard. So I no longer let them set seed. So that is kind of onion 101, and I see another little scape here. So this guy is making a flower, and we're gonna decapitate it just so that it doesn't, you know, end up everywhere. So the one onions are, you know, in the garlic family. And the one thing I do let make the little flower is my garlic, because when garlic gets a little scape like this, you'll want to pick it off along with the, so if this flower was growing here, they look very similar. We'll just pretend. I would pick this whole thing off, and then they're very, very, very tasty. So you can eat the garlic scapes. Onions, we're not going to bother. And then the other thing I wanted to show you, I'm just looking here to see if I can find some. I started to get peas on my pea plant. So here's the pretty little pea flower. I'm looking for the little pea pods. We were out here picking these yesterday. So I might have gotten all of the ones off of here. I probably have some on this plant. So I can see these here. So here's some of our first peas. So when the pod is flat like that, these are good for eating fresh. You can just eat these right in the pod, or you can stir fry them. They're good stir fried. I like eating them fresh. And then when they get a bigger pod, I'm looking here to see if I can find a bigger one. And I don't see them. These are all pretty flat. So these are all good for eating fresh. When you get like a fatter pod, you can peel that open, and then you get peas like what you would think of as regular peas. George is wanting to know if I'm going to give him a... That's one of the problems of having dogs in your garden. They love to eat everything. So if you get a fatter pea pod, long story short, you can open it up and pull the peas out, and then you could, you know, I don't know, cook them in butter. That's really tasty. So that's peas we've been getting. We're getting a ton of spinach, beets, Swiss chard. You can eat the leaves. So I've been making salads where I clip a few leaves of that, a few leaves of spinach. You can eat the tops of beets. You can just sneak those in your salad too. And my radishes are starting to bolt, which just means they're getting ready to make a flower. And these are the watermelon radishes. And normally when they're like, I feel like when they're getting ready to make a flower, that's when you can pick them. So they're, wow. Okay, so there's your watermelon radish. These are really beautiful when you cut them open because they are multicolored on the inside. And it looks like it forked a little bit down, like as it's forming a root there. There's actually two pieces coming off of there. But that's okay. You can still cut that up, and that's still a super tasty radish. Maybe takes longer than French breakfast, but is still making radish, so that's good. And these were the last of the tomatoes to go in, so they're not, you know, as big as the ones that have been in the ground for a while. And those are, you know, more like, these ones are obviously a lot bigger. There's our lake. That's getting fixed this week, so I'm super excited about that. We are getting the materials to fix all of this. This is a drainage issue that's been going on for a while. But with all the rain, my mushrooms are super excited because they're like so moist. So super tasty. I picked a few of those off of there, and this thing is just so crazy awesome. I don't even know what to think about it. So that's been really fun. I have cantaloupe coming up here. I've been disappointed by cantaloupe over the last 20 years, and I kind of gave up growing it because I just feel like our summers, you know, we're probably zone 7B. Our summers just don't get hot enough long enough. I think he's eating something he found. Or he's eating grass. Summers are not hot enough long enough to really produce big cantaloupe, so I kind of got away from growing it because it was always disheartening. I'd get these little tiny stunted fruits and then they were never ripe. But I'm giving it a try again this year because last year I felt like summer was long and hot and perfectly fine for growing cantaloupe, and I didn't have any in the ground. So gonna give it the old college try. And then this, I have been harvesting beets. I'm just looking in here because one caught my eye. So there is a ginormous beet right here, and these are multi-sown, which means I didn't thin them basically. And you can see there's another little beet right here. So I'll be able to pull this one and still have a whole nother plant right there. That's looking very much like it wants to be eaten. And this too, look at that. Wow. I might just make this out of the ground and see. That's that is beautiful. It smells like dirt. It's just amazing. So I actually had beets for breakfast. I roast these at a high temperature, probably 425 after I've washed them, obviously cut them into quarters. Sprinkle them with sea salt, olive oil, a little bit of balsamic vinegar, and you just can't go wrong. You just roast those until they're tender, and then they're good the next day cold. You can put them in a salad. You can eat them for breakfast beets. So sorry, I had a lot of coffee this morning and I haven't quite put all that energy to use. What do you think, Wilson? You want beets for breakfast? He wags his tail no matter what you ask him, so I think he's just like, his answer is always yes. Is it yes? He says it's yes. So that's about the extent of information I have today for our little vegetable garden tour. I hope everyone is enjoying their quarantine. Drop me a line if you're growing anything interesting in your garden. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.